This conference will now be recorded.
And we'll begin first with a roll call and determination of quorum with Stacy Fine. Here.
Brown.
Here.
Brian Council. From the city of Fredericksburg, Jamie Jackson.
Jamie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
From Spotsylvania County, Colorado.
Here.
Rodney White. Jacob Passwick. Dan Hughes. King George County, Nick Minor. Kimberly Wilson. From Caroline County, Fred Pentington. From Fred, Aidencourt.
Here.
Fred Reed. From DRPT, Sierra Williams.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Todd Horsley. From VDOT, Michelle Shropshire. Steve Lane. Jim Ponticello. Dan Brunel. From DRE, Christina Hoffner. Here. From Federal Highways, Ivan Rucker. From PRTC, Bob Schneider.
Here.
Joe Stainsby. From GW Reicheneck, Kate Gibson. Here. Lee Anderson. TA, actually, I'll do the reading, so that includes roll call and we go for.
Great. Before we begin, I just wanted to ask, how many people that are physically here were here for the last in-person TAC meeting in March of 2020?
Yeah.
A lot of changes since then, so I'm just curious. It's great to be able to meet in person today. So next item on the agenda is the approval of the TAC agenda for today. This is an action item. Does anyone have any discussion on this topic?
Motion to approve. Second.
Am I allowed to second or make a motion? That's actually a question.
I believe you can make a motion.
Yes.
Or second.
Okay, sounds good. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 7th TAC meeting minutes. This is also an action item. Did anyone have any comments on the minutes from June? I said the TAC did not meet in July, so this was our last meeting date. Okay, well, I'll say if there are no comments, is there a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item is a review of the June 21st Policy Committee meeting with Ian.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As you all know, well, first of all, let me say hello. I have only met some of you ever online, so and some of you not at all, actually. So nice to actually meet you, even though I can't completely see everybody with their masks on and everything. Thanks for coming today, and nice to meet you. If I haven't met you before, please do say hi. But yeah, it's interesting times that we live in. With the policy committee agenda, we don't rehash the entire agenda in this meeting, obviously, and some of you do attend from time to time the policy committee meeting. So it's really just to highlight any items that happen in the meeting that might be of interest. We had in the last policy committee meeting 2 presentations, the one regarding TMAs, the transportation management areas, And there really was just some discussion about whether or not FAMPO could have an independent TMA within our region or not, and what the implications and costs and responsibilities and that were. The presentation is online, obviously, so you can have a look at it in some detail. The second one was on a regional transportation authority. There's been much talk in the news and in the state legislature about regional transportation authorities in the state and the possibility of having one in the greater Fredericksburg region. Again, just an introductory presentation. How do they work? And we used the example of what happened in Richmond, just by way of a case study to see, you know, what are the costs, what are the implications, what are the rules of the game, how was the money spent, and that kind of thing. The resolution regarding the commuter parking spaces was turned down a second time, so that was not approved. The FAMPO Community Engagement and Equity Plan was approved. The TIP updates began a public comment period, and those were related to Fred and engineering on a project, Fred Transit and engineering. Just a short year in review that I did, which I also I think did at this meeting. And then FAMPO approved support for Spotsylvania Raise grant application, and then the new slate of officers for the forthcoming financial year for the FAMPO Policy Committee was approved. So that's just a quick thumbnail, the key business that did happen if you weren't in the meeting, but we don't usually belabor it in this meeting, Mr. Chair. That's just a quick update for those who've forgotten what happened in June.
That sounds great, thank you. Next item is public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Have one?
Stacy, do you want to highlight the?
Yeah, we have one to read. It came to us before the tax packet went out, so you don't have this. We will send it around to everyone via email. In the interest of time, it's about 2 pages long, so we don't have time to read it with our continuing public comment allotment. I'm just going to summarize real quick for you. It's in regards to the infrastructure bill that is currently worked out by Congress. And just one statement really conveys the nature of it. The commenter writes, it is important to make sure that there is an awareness that some of that infusion of money should be set aside for the much needed and often overlooked portion of our communities that need equal access to public transportation. And again, we'll send it around to you all, and we will read it in full during the policy committee.
Sounds good, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is 7A, the FAMPO Transportation Improvement Survey with Ian Ollis and Matthew Lehane.
Thank you, Chairman. We are very excited about the survey and the results of the survey. And I'm going to run through some slides with you now to just have a look at what has happened. We had to choose which things to show you because the survey was super successful. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of stuff we did with it. So what you're getting is kind of a summary of what we saw. There's some interesting maps and graphs and charts that we have. Part of the things that we did achieve, that maps we made, graphs and charts we made, and data that we have. And we're going to make ourselves available to, first of all, the agencies, so DRE, OmniRide, DRCC, Fred Transit, and other agencies, DDOT, to show them something that pertains specifically to their entity. And we're also happy to go around to our jurisdictions to show them kind of some of the comments we got that pertain to their particular area. So we're happy to do that. This is going to give you an overall view of what happened. The survey was conducted between May 25th and June 18th. About the survey. So the goal is to collect data from residents in order to map travel trends and document transportation needs and concerns, to identify shortcomings in the current transportation system and suggest improvements, And we have a mix of virtual outreach, flyer distribution, in-person events. I remember standing outside Freight Transit, handing out flyers, enticing people to take the survey. We emailed a number of you and said, please, can you send this out to your people? A number of you did. Thank you very much. Staff have put it up on their website. Paul requested that the county send to staff, the city, send out to their database. This is, we think, exciting. We didn't pay anyone to take the survey, and the survey had 19 questions you had to fill in on your phone, on your laptop, and yet we still got 1,060 survey responses. That, I think, Paul was before me, so he may know the exact numbers, but that sounds to me like a record of responses to a survey like that in the jurisdictions. So we're really excited about 1,060 survey responses. And within that, the long form questions allowed you to type whatever you wanted, about 1,071 written comments. So it's really successful from our point of view in terms of the results achieved. The geographical spread of the respondents, you can see this is where people work that took the survey. But we asked specifically that people who took the survey lived in one of the family jurisdictions of the city. Some people, a very small handful who lived outside of the region, still took the survey. We didn't try to block them, but we targeted specifically, and you can see the spread across our jurisdictions of where the people lived, and here where exactly they worked. You can see all the way up past DC into Maryland, I believe, and some down in Richmond as well. There were one or two in real far-flung places, which was really interesting how far people travel in our region. So that was quite a good spread. Just some of the demographics, gender breakdown, very around the middle. And this date, we asked people the question before COVID, where did you work? And you can see there, 44% of the respondents work outside of the region, around 50% work within the region, and about 6% were teleworking before COVID started. So that's the breakdown. It's not by identification, just some of the data. Some people prefer not to answer this question, that's fine. But we just asked, do you represent the minority community, are you a senior citizen, etc. And you can see there the breakdown. We did get people from minority groups, disabled, senior citizens, etc. in the mix. So we think it was a fairly good mix. In terms of the roadways, the roadway comments are often connected to some of the other comments. So I teased out some of the roadway issues that we can identify, but you'll see later some of the roadway issues are built into the transit or locational issues later on. Which roadways were mentioned? This long form question said, where do you have difficulty accessing from home? Where can't you get to it? And so these are some of the places that people mentioned in that where can't I get to? And presumably these are there were a couple of comments that were crossing. This was out of potential 1,000 people who took the survey, and about 500 odd that answered this specific question. So you can see, 41 out of 500, 35, etc. Down here, the numbers are rather small. Those who receive travel and parking subsidies. So you can see on the left that parking subsidy, did you get a parking subsidy or free parking, right? Some of the people just have free parking, they park on the street or somewhere and they don't get a fine. So did you get free parking or a subsidy? And you can see the difference between those in yellow outside of the region, who work outside of the region, and those who work in the region. So people who work in the region generally get more free or subsidized parking than those who work outside the region. I suppose that would make sense in a sense. DC, it's difficult to get free parking unless your employer does. Those who said no, you can see again a higher number outside of the region. ticket fares, are your fares subsidized, or do you get a free ticket on any one of the transit systems, or that kind of thing. And you can see there, most people vote. Again, inside, no one's subsidizing each ride, I'm afraid, unfortunately. But people do get subsidies for more distant travel and local travel. Just some comments that came out more than once. The reason the infrastructure and systems are not well designed for first and last mile travel requirements. The comment comes in different forms from different people. Then there's a willingness to walk or bike if there's more safe paths available, or take transit if there's better access. Those are just, again, comments that came out a number of times. Transit overview. This is interesting. If you travel in a car, why did you not take transit? So we try to get to grips with what are the things that prevent people from choosing another option than taking a single, well, driving alone in a car. And you can see here the big numbers. Transit is infrequent, unpredictable, unreliable, or inconvenient, or accessibility is a problem. There's no transit route near my home, so I can't get on. So those typically you'll see throughout the survey are the two things that are preventing people, more people, from taking transit. It's too far away, or it's slow, inconvenient, unreliable. Those are the two things I keep coming back over and over again. But there is a difference because we ask people for their approximate home location and their approximate work location. There is a difference between those who work in the region and those who work outside of the region. So if you work inside of the region, I'm more concerned about reliability and frequency and all that. Those who work outside of the region, access is more a problem. They can't get to BRE or OmniRide or something that takes them far away. These are people who complained about accessibility issues, and we try to map them. So the map on the left is those who work inside of the region, or those who work outside of the region. And we're looking at, if you see white on the map, anywhere white on the map, we don't have data. Somebody didn't answer this question from that area. So white, don't conclude anything. We know nothing about this area on this question. But if it's gray, no people mention that particular problem. So we don't take transit because of accessibility. Where are they? These are the people inside the region that don't take transit because of accessibility. So they probably want local transit. These are people who are traveling further away. They don't want necessarily local transit unless it's last mile to get to the transit to take them on a distance. And you can see the map is different. There's a bunch of people here. You can see relative to that map, who are traveling presumably to DC and Northern Virginia. And they have accessibility getting to whatever the form of transit is. But there are also some here, as you can see. The dark blues over here, OmniRide might want to dig into that, BRE might want to dig into that, and even VDOTs in terms of like how we get people to that. Why local workers don't take the bus? This is a local question. This is not about anybody who works outside of the region. All of these are about people who live within the region. 498 people answered this question. So of those 500 odd, trip by transit is inconvenient because there's no route connection close to my home. So you can see this is the biggest single issue for people who work inside of the region on this question was home. And the second most important thing that they chose is the trip by transit is too long. It takes me too long to get there. Whatever that means, you know, many of you are knowledgeable planners and transit companies and that, and you've got to interpret those two questions. What does that practically mean? It takes too long. Is it that there are too many connections? Is it that the wait time is too long? Is it that the etc. So I know you're all capable of doing that. you've got the presentation, so you can look through these other items. My car is less expensive than the public transportation choice. Remember, this is local people specifically. Why long distance commuters don't take public transit? Here there are more big numbers. 418 people answered this particular question. You can see here, there's no option for transit on my route. There's another very high number. This is people who are commuting outside. These are not local people. Sorry, not people who work locally. And again, no option for transit on my route. It's inconvenient, but again, inconvenience because of location, not because of whatever the speed of that. They don't run at the time of day when I need them. The trains, the VRE, this is a VRE type issue which you want to think about. The trains don't run when I need them. The trains or buses are too slow. That makes the trip by transit too long. Too many connections required. So you can see again the same two coming across in the spectrum in a slightly different form. Accessibility again, and the total speed and inconvenience of the trip. The same two things answered in different ways. What would entice you to take transit? We asked the public that. Almost 1,000 people responded. Quicker and more reliable travel times and more access. Similar kind of thing. A new bus or light rail service, more reliable transit connections, less expensive ticket costs. Across the ticket you can use across the different platforms. Or if the cost of driving went up substantially, so for VRE and OmniRide, if the gas price goes up, you probably need more customers. And you can see the others slightly less numbers. This I found to be a fascinating set of maps. The one on the left are riders who said, thank you very much, I like my car, don't want any transit. We're going to use the roads. You can see a spread. Again, ignore the white because people who live there chose not to answer this question. But you can see there, wherever there's blue, they're saying, I'm good with my car, don't want any transit. That's fine. We know something about those people. This map is those who say, I do want a new form of transit or a new route or a new something. I want transit. You can see that there's decidedly, you see the blues in the middle, there's decidedly a lot of people here and it's that less so, even though there's blue here and some grays, less people per unit are saying, I want transit. It's all, you could almost draw a line across somewhere here and say, all these areas people want more transit, except for obviously where there's grays and white. And over here, less transit. There's a definite pattern, I think. Again, we you know, you can all see what you see in a picture, but that map says to me there's definite areas where people want more transit and areas where they are not so enthusiastically supportive of transit. This is the slide which I showed in the policy committee in June. Just slightly updated it because the survey has still a couple of days to run before the end. The numbers are slightly different. What kind of transit do you want? You can see again, I didn't want one. 21% of the respondents said, I don't want transit. I'm quite good with what I want, leave me alone. But there's a substantial number who want light rail, commuter rail, new service, new routes, new infrastructure, whatever. We tested around the bus lane. There's a new bus station or bus stop, very few people. So on existing routes, people are not asking for more bus stops. They're not wildly enthusiastic about it. A new regular bus route, 13%. If you add those up, you can see that there is interest in transit, and it's higher than I would have expected. I thought this blue line, I don't want transit, is going to be much higher. I expected this to be quite a lot higher than it actually turned out to be.
Yeah. When you talk about a new commuter rail route, is that just generic terminology or is it another line, or did you make that distinction?
We did not ask them in this question a lot of detail. We just said, if we could give you new transit, what kind, so we asked where you would want it. This asks, what kind do you want?
Okay,
So we'll get into slides in a moment which says, where do you want it?
okay,
And I mean, some things are going to be impossible to achieve, right? So we just ask the public what they want so that we can get to the level of interest. So people like yourselves can say, well, is there any interest in this?
Mhm.
Yes or no? And in some areas, no.
so
Yes.
more focused on mode than specific.
The specific question focused on mode. But remember the 19 questions. So in there, there are some of those other answers that you're looking for. Passenger rail. Just kind of keywords, timing trains, faster travel times, expanded service and stations, better access. This access thing comes up over and over and over again. But now we're getting into some of those questions that you were trying to ask a moment ago. This is, we saw so many people saying light rail or where. So we mapped them and then we selected where they're clustered. Because if you've got one person somewhere running light rail or a bus rapid transit system or a commuter rail, can't supply a train for one person. So we looked at where they're clustered and everywhere you can see a circle, there are clusters. So by home areas, each of those circles are where we found groups of people that live together or closer together that say we like light rail. Northern Swansea, there's a bunch, and they're either wanting to go to downtown Fredericksburg, or they're wanting to go up to, I think we call that area the Berea, US 17, where Guy goes, that sort of area. Down here near Route 208, there's a cluster. Route 17, Swansea Parkway, there's a cluster. Idlewild, surprisingly, there's a cluster of people near Idlewild who'd love to trade to get something like that. And then, of course, the other end of that, there's a group of people who live there. Where they work, you'll see that come up again. People who work in Dahlgren want rapid transit to get there. Where they live, you know, the areas that are working in Dahlgren. This is obviously Quantico. This is again that same spot, kind of area US 17, near Guyton. In the city itself, that they're coming from northern Swansea area. Here, exit 126 is a cluster, and around the Swansea courthouse, there's a cluster of people who work there, not who live there, who work there, and work in the city. So what about commuter rail? This is now from light rail to commuter rail. So we segmented out those people and we said, well, where do they live and work? Well, again, they're working in Dahlgren. So people who work in Dahlgren either want a commuter rail or a light rail or something. They want some rapid transit out here. Obviously, DC. This is expected, but it's something that is already partially there, right? We've got DRE that are running trains. We've got even Amtrak. But clearly there's a desire for more. And when you look at those written comments, they're saying more trains at better times. So they want this big numbers. There's some at Quantico, working at Quantico, and there's some working in and around the city of Fredericksburg, downtown Fredericksburg. On that side, you can see people's home locations. So where do they live? The people who say they want more commuter rail, where do they live? In a lot, in northern Swansea, in the city. Is that Idlewild?
Yeah, that dark one.
Idlewild, they want it up here, but southern Stafford, northern Stafford. Those are where people say they want more commuter rail, that's where they live, this is where they're working. Obviously, there are lots of other work locations, but again, when there was just one person, we didn't highlight it because you can't build infrastructure. Buses. If you travel in a car, why did you not take the transit system, buses particularly? It's inconvenient. There's no route connections from my home to my destination. In fact, by far the biggest number of people, 445 people said that. The network doesn't take me where I want to go. And the trip is too long, takes too long. The third highest one is my car is less expensive. Leaving with my car is less expensive than transit. If your car is cheaper than taking a credit bus, I would be very surprised. Maybe there's a perception issue here. If you said maybe Amtrak to DC, possibly. That's an interesting slide. And there's no option along my route. Trains are infrequent, trips too long. Local bus, where do people who want bus infrastructure live and travel to work? These are their home areas. You can see their home areas in the big circle, and the lines just indicate where they will travel to for work. So again, Route 3, Route 17, down at Fredericksburg, Route 17 in Swansea, and in the Leland area. They want more bus. Omni ride. Interestingly, people who have taken Omni ride in northern Pennsylvania, so they're driving from here up to the red dot where the pickup spot is. See where I'm coming from? This Route 3. You can see in the city, people are going to there to get on the Omni ride bus. Down here on 17, there are a bunch, and then other places in Stafford. They're currently all riders. That's where they live. They're having to drive into the location. Their working locations, Montgomery County, the District, Arlington, that's pretty much what we expect. Those with disabilities and other limitations, there's no first class stops or route deviations. This is what they say. So if this is not true, this is what the public says. We choose whether we agree with them or not. But lack of paratransit options, guaranteed ride home program is not compatible with wheelchairs. And inadequate pedestrian infrastructure for those with physical disabilities. The actual wheelchair can't always get on the sidewalk, etc. Overall impressions. Congestion on key roadways is high on people's agendas. That's clear. There's more interest in transit than at least I would have expected about you. Transit desirability is strong in some locations than in others, particularly rapid transit. We're going to include the survey results in future work products of CAPA, and we'll make further detail available to our jurisdictions and our agency partners. So I think that's my summary of what we've learned so far from the survey. We'll carry on using that data and stuff when we do the LRTP and the express study and so on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian, and I will confirm, I think that the response rate you got is a FAMPO record. I did have a question. I know kind of NVTC, they recently sent out kind of a survey for microtransit, and I know that kind of first mile, last mile, that was raised as an issue kind of in the presentation. Is that an area where you see an opportunity for the region maybe to do better in, maybe to help with connections to Fred Bus or to VRE?
Microtransit is typically designed, obviously, for areas where there's less people. But one of the, and it works, but one of the cost factors, and we have to about transit people, so I shouldn't probably comment on it as much as they should. But one of the cost factors, as I understand it, for transit is the driver's salary. So the smaller the bus, the more costly it is to run service if you've got to pay the driver anyway.
Yeah, so, and Bob can probably speak to this too, but microtransit is really evolving and we're not really sure where it's going. I mean, the one thing that I'm in favor of looking at is having your end of line would be where your hub is. So your microtransit would be in an area, you know, let's just say we have it at 3 or 4 square mile area, instead of having that micro transit to take people everywhere within that area, it would take you to an end of line where you directly connect to fixed route. I think that would be a scenario for this area and other areas that it would work. There's other ways that people have been doing micro transit, subsidizing Uber. That works out really well until everybody finds out you have free Uber rides. And then the price is, is costing a lot more, getting more riders and things like that. There's also, there's different micro transit areas where you can travel freely within them. Those work good for downtown areas like parking. I know Savannah, they have a free micro transit program to basically get people who work downtown to bring them downtown where they're parking further away. And it's a free bus that you can, or a free car you can call on your phone. I think for this area, probably if we saw micro transit, it would have to be the one point in the area, everything coming together, but maybe Bob has something he wants to add to it.
Yes, two things, one related to cost. 85% of your transit cost in bus is behind the wheel. Or what we say is driving the bus, meaning it's the labor and the fuel. Literally 85% of the cost. It's very, very different from rail, which is extremely capital centric, low operating centric, or we're very high operating centric, low capital. So one of the things you run into is, especially in low density areas, you're having to increase your labor pool to access all the pockets you want to get to, especially if you don't have a robust road network. So you are dealing with rural transportation. It's very inefficient in terms of performance indicators. But then if you take coverage, for example, and you then deploy those costs over square mile, it's actually pretty reasonably priced. So part of it is just in terms of micro transit, it's what are you trying to solve? Are you trying to bring access to something that's never had it? Are you trying to take a fixed route bus that's unproductive? Is this a cost question or is this a service model question? Based upon all of that, it shapes and focuses what micro transit is. Micro transit is just basically flexible services inside communities.
So you might replace an underperforming bus with micro transit.
Correct, and we're going through that right now in Manassas Park. We retooled our services in the western part of Prince County. 2 of the routes are kicking butt. They're doing exactly what we thought. The third one is already the labor of the driver. So that's a case where what we're looking at is we're not looking to save money, right? We're already committed to the dollar. Our problem is it's not performing. Can we get more cheeks in seats? How do you get more cheeks in seats? You expand it, you market it, you program it, but even that's a finite number. So then you just expand the zone with micro, and that's what we're doing. So that's an example. We're tackling it from a ridership problem and a performance problem because we want to increase the number of users. It's not a raw bottom line cost factor. So it just depends on what you're trying to solve dictates how or where that might impact.
And just to build up what Bob's saying, just 2 things. What you're talking about is the coverage versus ridership trade-off. Depending on how you deploy your buses, you're either going to be going for coverage, maybe more rural areas, you're going to be going for ridership. You're trying to get your ridership up so you want more frequent routes. For us, if we had an underperforming route, what we would probably do, which is different what Omniar would do, we would actually combine our route and get more frequent service, maybe somewhere where we're seeing high ridership. Just like you said in the survey, people say the buses aren't running frequently. Right now, we just have hour frequency on our buses. I know OmniRide runs much more frequently than on their routes. So we now, with our new Mary Washington route, is going to be half-hour service. So we took 2 underperforming Eagle routes by University of Mary Washington, and then we basically are combining those together to make half-hour service, basically just Fredericksburg, UMW, Central Park. Now this is the Mary Washington route, so it's only going to be when it's going to be in session, only going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But this is what we're doing to try to improve transit service. Now, when we have our routes in a place with good frequency and things like that, then we look at micro transit, then we look at other ways that we can, like Bob said, put more butts in seats.
Anything else for anybody?
I have one question. Is the ridership changing? Like, are people's habits changing from the last survey that we conducted? Are people more inclined to take public transit, or does it depend on where they're going, because if you live within the region, more than likely you'd probably be in your car. But if you're commuting out of the region, you're probably gonna look for those types
This survey doesn't seem to answer that question.
of, okay.
And I don't have another FATMO survey that asks some of the questions that I can say, well, 10 years ago, that was the data, and now the data. So I would lie to you if I told you this is the answer to the question. And some of you being around here a long time will know about travel patterns. I know that some bus ridership was dropping before COVID. People presumably were carpooling or getting a lift with their neighbor or the national trend has been slow dropping bus ridership, except where the bus network redesigns happened and the new routes are more favorable and people like them, and then the bus ridership is gone. I'm used to it around the collapsing bus ridership, and it's now gone up by 7% prior to COVID. How the direct everything to everyone. Right. So that's all I can say is that we don't have these questions asked 10 years ago or 5 years ago to compare with. There's a national trend that I can talk about. That's all I'll say on
that. Thank you very much, Ian. The next agenda item is the Smart Skill Round 5 update with Matthew Lane.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to do this quick and dirty, give a quick overview of where we're at and what the next steps are. So you all have seen this timeline. Of course, last update was June, did not run one in August or July. So we're asking for developing a preliminary list, and everyone sent in an idea of their applications by mid-July. So now we're at the reviewing of the project stage. Again, one thing we're looking at is what projects are eligible for MPOs and PDCs. So of course, the corridors, statewide significance, and the regional networks. The projects that are on those are the ones that are eligible. So quickly the list of projects, we have a couple things here: the name of the project, the jurisdiction, agency, and then two things that we added. So we went through and tried to figure out which projects are eligible as a regional project, so MPO or PDC, FAMPO or URC, as well as if the project is in the FAMPO draft CLRP, which is an calculator today, and then the URC rural LRT list, so the rural projects and the urban projects. Caroline County, Inglewood County, Fred Transit, Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, and then we have Fredericksburg and a placeholder theory project. So again, we just did a quick and dirty look at what projects might be eligible, and also sent for the Steve to take a look as well. A few comments from that they have. So next step, reviewing project list. So reviewing this list of projects for further consideration in preliminary pre-application process. So next step is we're requesting that each jurisdiction agency submit for consideration their regional projects. We know everybody sent in their list of possible projects. Some of them might be local, some of them might be regional projects that we want. We're asking that we further define those. If you can send that to us by next Friday, August 3rd. You have your list of projects, and we'd like you to send us which projects you would like for consideration on regional MPO PDC list. What we're going to do is score them based on quantitative FAMPO LRTP scoring measures. So the process of inclusion just recently completed the LRTP and presented, and we'll present that in September to assist with ranking and selection of that list of projects. So to kind of help us decide which projects might be a best fit for Smart Scale and which projects may not be. And then looking ahead, making a request after that for specific VDOT preliminary pre-application. That's it. I'm going to take any questions.
Can you just go over what you're looking for by Friday, August 13th?
Yeah, so-
It's not in our list here.
Yeah, so there's the local projects that you guys will submit, the 4 or 5 projects for the state of Fredericksburg, and there'll also be the MPO or PDC list. So we're looking for you guys to tell us which projects you would like that we might consider for the regional list projects. So those 8 to 10 projects. So out of that list, whichever ones you would like for regional consideration. Some of these may or may not be eligible for regional consideration. That's what we're attempting to do. There's maybe potentially a couple questions on some of these projects that we can get into.
Yeah, I believe most ERE projects are projects of corridors of statewide significance as regional projects. But to provide any regional projects by the 13th, that would be challenging for the area because we're just starting to talk through what the needs are. Also, where some of the needs I expect will be are related to transforming rail in Virginia, and that is still an evolving program. And from a VRE service perspective, that is still evolving. So I will see what we have, and we have a meeting on Wednesday to talk through projects. And we can provide information and do that.
A placeholder at
That's what I was gonna say, is that at this point, we know that even on the roadway side of things too, that a lot of project ideas are kind of placeholder and make sure there's studies that are underway right now. The V-Trans pipeline studies are, coming online. So we know at this point that a lot of the ideas are gonna be a little bit more conceptual than we would like, but again, this gets us started in the right direction a few months ahead of schedule. So that's the idea here. It doesn't have to be a concrete finite improvement that's already identified.
So the placeholder, or just a general idea of where that project may be, is perfectly fine at this stage. Of course, we're looking to get a general idea of where these projects, how well they might do in smart scale, but what we have there is fine.
Yeah, Matthew, I have a couple comments. Can we go back to the schedule, which is one of the initial slides? So this is a great kind of diagram, but I think it would be good to also include just kind of the steps to a final project submission.
Yeah, so.
Particularly how to go from the 5 down to the 4.
Yeah, so quickly, this is of course up until March of 2022 for the pre-application submission. So what we're looking at is one of the ways to go down the project for is potentially the ranking of projects. That'll be a further discussion that we get into. We have created a 11 by 17 draft of everything after March. So what happens after pre-application submission? We're happy to send that as well and get included in further package. But this is kind of where it is, where we're at for now. And I'll see if there's any other further information we can add to further delineate that process.
The second comment, can you go to the Spotsylvania sheet, please? I believe it's out, yes. So we actually thought kind of what you asked today, we thought that was the intent of the July 16th request. So the top 6 on there, those are the regional projects for FAMPO and GWC consideration. And the bottom 6 are kind of local consideration, basically for Spotsylvania. And that was reflected in the email. But I'll say with those studies, I know, even as Adam said, there are a couple of them that are kind of just beginning the pipeline studies. I'll say that there are 2, the Route 1 Massaponax corridor study and the Lafayette study that are close to completion. I know we have a Lafayette Boulevard study coming up. I forget when the date is, might be next week. But I think we could maybe, be at a point, I'll say maybe the next couple months of having, more kind of clear kind of projects from those. But the pipeline study, I know we're having an initial meeting this week now. I think it's on Wednesday. Stephen, what's the time frame that the studies are hoping to maybe have some recommendations?
Once we actually hold our meeting, we'll establish the schedule, but clearly to have anything ready for smart scale round 5, we're going to be looking at trying to, get a lot of this down by the end of the year. Now, whether that's possible, and we have 5 studies underway, things consultant, and remains to be seen, but I don't know that that's not realistic. Certainly to the point of where we have some idea where our recommendations are. I don't look for any of these to be published until right around the time of pre-application, which is April 1st. But sometime before that period, we should have some idea. And it's good to know that, because when I looked at the review list, and I saw studies, and it wasn't clear to me what that.
Yeah,
you're talking about a project that is a result of the study, because I thought they were you're proposing conditions studies, which of course are not eligible. So it's good.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say the studies, I'll say the Massaponax corridor study, that has, I think, something like 12 or 13 intersections it was looking at. If we were to do basically all of those, the cost would be over $100 million. We're not going to do that. We're going to pick a couple of them, but we're not sure at this point which couple we're going to pick.
So I think the part from here is if everybody could give us an indication of which projects they intend to submit on their local list and which projects they would like us to consider for the regional list. I know we did get something in your email, but everybody else, so that we have an indication of which are the projects they would like us to prioritize for the regional lists, we can then start to look at that. But bearing in mind, Stephen, these are going to still be preliminary because of all of what you just said.
Yeah, and as you do that, it's a little more detailed you that more of a practical approach to being able to give any kind of screening advice, a little more detailed. But some of them pivot on whether it's what people. But yeah, the list is good to see that. It's so nice that you guys taking that steps and all that here. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll just ask any of the jurisdiction staff and staff or the city of Fredericksburg or Spotsylvania, if there are suggestions you have for your projects, needs from your jurisdiction perspective for VRE that you think might be an eligible project, or if the jurisdiction's pursuing projects that might have a relationship to VRE access or parking or something else, to let me know so that we can coordinate that through our ops board members, and so that if something comes up at FAMPO, that's not the first time they're hearing about something related to VRE.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Next agenda item is 7C, the CMAC and STBG prioritization methodology update with Adam Anchor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to stay back here. This will be relatively quick, but just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we are getting the process underway to start on a more comprehensive update to the methodology that we had. So this, of course, for those of you that have been around for a little while now, know that this has been a work program item for FAMPO for the last couple of years now. And last summer, of course, we undertook the process to add that benefit to the TMA measure into the STBG scoring process. And that was kind of the stopgap to get the policy committee kind of in line with where things were for the FY 22-27 call for projects process, which ran from January 2021 up until May. So it seems like it's a long ways out, January 2022, but we've only got 4 TAC meetings between now and then, including today. So we just wanted to go over a quick timeline for what we're thinking about as far as getting something on the table that can be approved in a January timeframe. So today, what we wanted to do again is just show you this time frame as far as the next few months, what we're looking at doing. We want over the course of August for you to take a look at the existing methodology, which we've included in the packet and is on the FAMPO website, and help us identify some of the shortcomings that were brought about in this last process. So we did add in the benefits of the TMA measure, but I think what we noticed over the scoring process, both internally and in comments that we received, that there's still quite a few shortcomings as far as project intake. So how many projects do does each jurisdiction or agency get? What is the nature of those projects and what they're looking to improve? Should we separate out, for instance, CMAC and have its own scoring methodology from STBG? Those types of questions. So point out too that I know with a couple conversations we had with Stafford and Spotsylvania prior to last summer, we started to get that ball rolling a little bit. So we're kind of picking that back up at this point. So what we're looking to do is at the September TAC meeting, have a little bit more of a discussion than today to sort of give us a little bit of direction as staff is saying, here's the top, say, 4 or 5 things we're looking to do with this methodology update. In October, we'll come back to the working draft, but we can workshop together. We can pick out some of the points that might still have issues. Continued review in November, and then in December, of course, FAMPO does not meet. Then hopefully what we can do is by January 2022, come back and approve the document and start the FY 23-28 call for projects. So again, that's a quick overview and happy to take any questions as we kick this off.
Hey, Adam. I have a couple comments. So one is that with the schedule, it would be maybe helpful to kind of add in just the schedule for just kind of the project scoring and allocation, how that would work in the spring. Make sure we have enough time to kind of make the VDOT schedule for that. I'll say just looking at the schedule, I think it's great that this has been created. I would throw out there, it might be good just to kind of consider maybe a December meeting, maybe we just meet on this. Seems like it's ambitious, like a lot is, trying to be covered in a short amount of time. And I'll say, at least speaking for Spotsylvania, we would be open to December meeting if we need it. The last comment I had is just with the HIP funding, which I know that I guess Pampo gets kind of every once in a while and got some recently. Would that be part of this, or how is it proposed that would work?
We would take guidance from the TAC, obviously, and policy committee if they choose to weigh in on that. Currently, the thing that we've set up here is to create a methodology for CMAC, SDBG, and so on. Pampo as a unit then needs to decide, do you want to apply that to the funding or don't you, because it comes along infrequently and we don't know when we'll get it again. We do have HIP funding that we've now put kind of in a holding pen to say, let's first decide how we're going to do this. So I think we would take guidance. There's no hard and fast rule in legislation anywhere. I see a hand over there.
HIP funding is very much like your RSCP funding. It's very much in the same category. So if you wanted, even though I have separated it out, if you wanted to put it in the RSCP category, it runs in that same family, I'll say. They're like growth. And so that would be something to consider, is that it's just something that popped up once in a blue moon. And so maybe when it does pop up, you just throw it into your SCBG or whatever you want to call it, funding, and just that you get a bonus.
So the SDBG, sorry, Mr. Chair, the SDBG rules also apply to funding.
Correct.
It's the basic concept. So it
Correct.
would work to use whatever we score and allocate on the SDBG for whatever that methodology is. We could use it for HIP funding because the rules are the same. So it would follow to do that. If
That's a good point. And with the HIP funding last time, wasn't there kind of HIP funding for the entire Pampo region? And there was HIP funding just for North Stafford?
Oh, man. I don't remember that. I know there's definitely TAP money that's just for staff. Oh, God, well, I'd have to go back and look.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to go into that detail now, but that'd be something to look into.
We'll correspond with you on email, and if you relocate that, then you can just let us know. Thank you. I'll make a note, Mr. Chair.
Do any other members have any other questions for Adam on this topic?
No, I just agree with you, Mr. Chair, that maybe a meeting in December, just something else further between the October and January date would be good for the group.
Very good. Okay, we can go to the next agenda item, 7D, the 2050 long-range transition plan update with Ian Ollis, Jordan Chandler, and Adam Hager.
Mr. Chair, Jordan is going to do the presentation, and then Adam is going to walk us through the draft allocation.
Good morning, everyone. So this is a review of how we took our revenue projections and incorporated that into the process, looked at our existing CLRP list and any projects that are in the SIP that needed to be also included in the CLRP list. The new candidate projects that we received from you guys, how we scored the projects, the prioritization and physical constraint of those projects, and then the draft list, which you guys have in front of you as well, as we present in the. So we started with the revenue projections that each agency and jurisdiction sent to us, and we broke them down into funding bands, 3 timelines that will cover the length of the document. The first one includes previous and 22 to 27 funding. This is the 6-year improvement program window. It's a mid-year, which is 28 to 38. And then the out year, which is 39 to 50. And I want to stop and take a moment to point out that the first band has a lot more money shown in the parentheses because that includes previous year funding, but it also includes statewide and district-wide funding. That is only for the 6 years, and that's not projected. Also, we got VIA administrative and maintenance funding for FY22 to FY16. And this is almost $3
$1.3 million, and this is not included with what we have for added capacity and transportation operations. And then additionally, we have what the new projects for increased capacity in those transit operations broken down by mode for highway, transit, and so on the left side, we have the teal blue color is the admin and maintenance, and then the gray color is broken down by mode on the right side. So about 43% is for highway, 1.75% for active transportation, 10% for transit and TPM, and then the last 1% is for PE and studies. And so this is how we broke down each of these funding sources. We call them funding buckets, and they're based on the general mode. And so, for instance, some of these sources can be broken down to many types of modes. The CMAQ SPG can be used for active transportation, it can be used for highway, it can be used for many different things. Again, with the smart scale money and the local money, it can be broken down in different ways. So these statistics are based on the LRDP goals and objectives, what the MPO best practices have been, FAMPO trends, and then current trends. And so the constraint long-range plans does not allocate these monies. So if we say a blank percent goes to this based on the funding source, that's not an allocation. That is purely just the planning process, so that we can anticipate what we will have in the region. And then the percentages on the following slide will total the projected revenue of the localized source. So this is just for active transportation and highway. So the first one, highway, we have the smart scale money, 83.5% of that goes into the highway bucket. And then the other description, a little line lower, is 15% for active transportation and 1.5% for transit PM. This is just a quick overview. The other slides that we have for transit PM will have the exact breakdown on them. This is just so you know that will equal 100%, but 83.5% goes to highway. Data code repair for highway, SMAC SPG 80% for highway, and then local 98% for highway. For active transportation, we have 15% for smart scale money, and then all the cabinet. And so this is a breakdown by the years. So again, the first band, which is the diagonal line, is actual amount, not projected revenue. So it's got the SIP money, the previous money, and the state and district wide money. So that's why it's a little bit high in some cases. So starting on the left side for the highways, we have the VDOT money, and then the CMAQ money, and then on the right side, the active transportation money, like half, and again, the VDOT money. And so for transit and CM funds, so all of these sources make up the fund, and then the breakdown is as follows. So for VDOT, we have the CMAQ SPG 12.5%, highway of the front scale for capital improvement 1.5%, spread regional transit VRE, Commonwealth Rail Fund, Vanpole Lines, GW Ride Connect, Healthy Generation, and then the Rapid Planetary Community Service Board, all of 100% goes to the transit fund. And then again, this is a breakdown. And again, the hash lines is for the actual and not projected. And the agency funds does include capital and operating costs. So it's higher or lower based on what you anticipate. And lastly, for the transit and PE study, or the PE and studies, we have the statewide and district-wide money, again, just for the 6 years, and this is actual amount. VDOT money for CMAQ and SPG, 7.5%, and then local money, 2%. And again, the breakdown by years. And so this is where we start. We look at the revenues, where we're going to start with our existing CLRP list. So we applied all of those revenue buckets and funding pools to the existing 2045 list. And all the projects that were in the SIP that were not previously included in the 2045 CLRP that we thought fit to be included. Then we assigned a year of expenditure for anything that wasn't happening in the SIP years. So anything between 2038 or 2028 and 2050, we added a band. We used the provided 2021 cost estimates from you guys and used an inflation rate. So for our mid-year bands at 22%, and for our out-year bands, 44%. And again, this is just based on the government process and code outline for creating an LRP. And so for our new candidate projects, we received 149 new applications, and they're broken down by mode and number at the top. And this chart on the left shows by mode and also by agency or jurisdiction. The little table at the bottom, you can see Stafford provided 37 highway projects. And then on our right side here, we have the new candidate projects based on the cost. So 464 million was applied for highway, 238 million for active transportation, and then 46 million for transit. Yeah. So the scoring will be reviewed by Adam in a minute, but we just have two exceptions to the scoring process: the Fred enhancement bus route and the bus replacement, and then the Greenway improvement. And so this chart is a breakdown of the existing projects that we have on our 2045 list, and then we have 27% new projects from our pool that we did call for projects. And so after we took the 2045 existing project list and incorporated all six projects that we needed to, we had this amount left over for each list by each source, by each year. So it's a little bit categorized in how much we can spend and when. So for example, the first one is all the way to the left, the highway active transportation, we have the highway broken down into 2 years, and then their respective amounts that could be projected to have and receive. And that goes throughout the various lists that we have. And then for the selection of these projects, we received 56 highway projects. We selected 54 of them, 20 out of 40, 76 active transportation, and all 11 of 11 transit PM. You'll note that the PE and studies is not listed on here. We don't have a scoring methodology for that based on the new that we created, so we just incorporated the list. So all those be included in the draft list. And so why we didn't pick a certain project? If projects were too expensive to fund based on the available running balance, say we had $10 million left, and the next project on the list based on score was $11 million, we look at the next few projects. If the next two projects were less than the $11 million, we'd skip that project and pick 4 or 5 more depending on how much money was available. So we could have a greater number of projects included.
Yeah, Jordan, can I just ask a question just with the active transition? So assume that's like bug pet, right? One kind of point I want to make is a lot of those projects are connected to highway projects. I know at least in our case, maybe the city and Stafford of this too, there's some cases where the highway project is kind of scheduled to be on the list, but the active transition project connected to that is not. And if the highway project were built, the active transition would also be built. An example, like in Spotsylvania's Harrison Road, that's on the highway list, but it's kind of the VCR trail portion along it kind of is slated not to be funded. So I'm wondering if we're almost like double counting in a way, because we're like trying to come up with the money for the active transportation on the active transportation list, but it's also included in the highway project list. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to maybe get more of those active transportation projects into the CLRP.
Yeah, Paul, I think that's definitely an opportunity. We definitely don't want to double count the revenues. And I think one potential way of handling that is, so part of what we've done too, so for instance, in Spotsylvania County, there were a number of applications for the same part of the roadway, where the roadway application was one, the active transportation was another. We treated them separately, scored them separately. One thing that we could do is say, look at the highway project first, and if it has an accompanying bike ed project, increase the cost and sort of loop that in sort of one package project that includes both modes. I think that's one way of handling it. We do want to make sure that there's some congruency between the highway and the active transportation. So for instance, if there's a project not funded on the active transportation, but the highway improvements are, that might be room for an exception. So that's part of what we wanted to look at, have the time for review today.
Thank you.
And so this is what is cumulative and creative for our draft list that you guys have in front of you that Adam will go over again in a second. So we have a breakdown by jurisdiction on the top half and then by mode. And then the cumulative sum of what is included in the draft list. At the bottom, we have projects by mode rather than projects by agency. And then the estimated cost amount in 2021 dollars for those projects by mode. And then again, the cumulative total, $4.2 billion. I think that is my last slide.
Thank you.
I don't see VRE on that list. Is it included in one of the other categories?
Yeah, so some of the projects are listed as multi-jurisdictional or region-wide, so those are probably where those.
Jordan, what's the schedule for trying to kind of get resolution on all of this?
So we're gonna review this again, it's just a draft. We're gonna need to approve this list, I think, September is when we're seeking approval, and then that will then go to the consultant so that they can begin the modeling effort. That will be then included.
For projects that can't be modeled, kind of like, you know, the active transportation, would there be a little bit more leeway in terms of trying to work out the issues? Or are we trying to do all those next month too?
So we definitely have to approve everything that's going to have both modeling and the conformity analysis. But that's got to be done because we have time constraints there.
Yes.
But I guess if there are active transportation projects that don't have to go through those two processes, I'm guessing that we could still fiddle with them if we need to. But in terms of, I think we need to get an approved list. Our consultants are waiting on us for the list that they need to model, and then the conformity stuff has to be rolled out. So those are the real constraints that we have, and we do need to get all of those done and approved.
Just a question on the modeling, and if we need to talk about this offline, we can. I guess, how will VRE be addressed? Because VRE service is included in the Metropolitan Washington Transportation Planning Board conformity analysis for their long-range plan. So I'm just not clear, sort of.
You're concerned that there's going to be a duplication
Yeah,
of conformity
or-
analysis.
Yeah.
Well, let's deal with that offline. It's not it's a technical thing. We'll handle that with you directly.
Okay.
But I'm sure we can work that out.
Okay.
We certainly don't want to create extra work.
We'll switch gears just a little bit and run through the list. So if you did not have to pick one up, we have some extra copies in the lobby, but they want to call everybody's attention to, first of all, the scoring. So this is the one where on the first page, you're going to see lots of yellow highlights. So what we've done is we tried to be as thorough, transparent, comprehensive as possible with it. So with the new methodology that all of our committees approved back in May, we did a call for project process, so that was for anything not on the existing 2045 constraint list. So as Jordan described, we went through and first applied projected revenues to the 2045 projects, and then we looked at the new projects here, scored them, you'll see the total score column, which has green shading, green being the highest score, all the way down to white. This is also by mode. So the first page that you're looking at here, page 1, is just the highway project applications that you received. That runs for 3 pages, and then it goes to the active transportation projects, of which there were approximately 76, I believe. That runs for about 5 pages. And then we go to the transit and TDN projects, which is just 1 page. So there's 11 projects there. The color coding, if it's in yellow, that's proposed for inclusion in the CLRP for 2050. It's in gray, that's proposed for leave. So it's really documented in the plan, but it won't be part of this. We've also done, according to the methodology, we said that we would provide a written justification for all the scores that we provide that are qualitative in nature. So it's quite a bit of work, there's a lot of content here. You have time to review this. What we've done is we provided what the score out of 10 for each of the qualitative measures are by mode, as well as why we gave it that score. So again, for your review, that's also broken down by mode, highway first, active transportation followed, lastly by transit. CDM, point out one small thing on the very last page of the scoring. We did have a couple technical corrections that we made. Did not affect the score in any way, didn't affect funding. But we did have some updates that we made in red text on the very last page, the first packet that has the scores. We want to point that out. And then next we got the draft constraint list. So this, of course, is broken down the way the PSO has historically done it as far as highway transportation on one list, broken down by functional classification. the active transportation projects start on page 7 of that highway active transportation list. And then we move to the transit CDM list, which goes for about 3 pages. And then we have finally the PD studies. The PD studies, they have to be physically constrained where we don't score them in any quantitative or qualitative way. We just ask you for what you're thinking about for studies. And based on the funding breakdown that we applied initially, with the funding things that, so everything, according to everything we got as far as disposal to the paper studies, we're going to constrain that's ongoing studies, of course, into FY 22, 27, for actual, if you will. And then it's about 6 that we got for new proposals. The rightmost column on the fiscally constrained list gives you kind of a quick rundown of how that project made it on the list. So it might be a 2045 key project that we're keeping and we've slightly adjusted it based on a state that's been updated, or the cost might be different in the SIP, or we've gotten voted from the respective jurisdiction as part of the project, say, broken out into 2. So one example, they make Chapter 10 is Mountain View Road. We had that on the list as one, we're keeping it. The project has been now split in 2 phases. That's kind of a quick rundown of what we're trying to display here. And again, there's 2050 candidate projects, so there's some projects that are submitted in the projects window. There's also a few projects that we've included here. We'll kind of look to VDOT a little bit on some of the projects that we've added for one with the SIP. So if we saw a project that should have been included in a constrained list, so we'll fund it, it's in there, just for whatever reason, we're not going to cancel it because we're going to add that in, just to be doubly sure that we're including everything that we did. So that's, again, a quick breakdown there of a quick guide as far as reviewing this list. I know it's a lot of information, it's a lot of pages. Have any questions?
If we have a question or a comment on some of this form, this is our opportunity to review this and work with you all.
Yep. If there's anything that you want to discuss today, we have some time for it during the staff meeting, but of course you can take your time back to the office.
I need to read this one a lot. Okay, just wanted to make sure this wasn't.
Yeah, Adam, would it be possible just for all the fans of jurisdictions just to send kind of an Excel kind of spreadsheet for each of these so we can kind of look at it in more detail?
Yeah,
I know from our perspective, we definitely want to look at some of the active transportation and see if there's some opportunity to maybe get some of those projects on the list.
Sure.
Yeah, what's that? There is I mean, I can hear by the mood of the silence, if I can use that phrase in the room, that it is a lot to absorb. So few comments. I just want to thank the staff because they've put in a lot of work over the summer to try and get this done, and you can see the level of detail involved here. And it's something staff haven't done for a while, so we brushed up on our skills, we networked with other people, and the hours that were put in here were quite significant over the summer. So just thank the team of staff for all the work that they did do. Secondly, it's a lot of information to absorb, but we tried to be very transparent and thorough so that there's not stuff hidden that we flipped a coin in a dark room and now you have a list. There's a lot of detail here for you to say. You really do know what's going on, but I appreciate that it's a lot to go over, and you may want to correspond with us after this morning.
Just add that, I think, looking at this, it's very clear you guys have done a lot of work, a lot of fun. It's so much so that I can already see things that I've left out. So I would like to just say this is clearly a lot of very good work.
Thank you.
Again, we are looking to have this approved next month, start the conformity process and all those lines too. I think we might have in air quality division, another standard for general monitor. We are in an ICG meeting, so that's the interagency consultation group. The TAB meeting in September, so the 9 o'clock here in this room, I think we're still in person at that point. So we will have that meeting to go through the approval list for conformity, so all of the trends in TEM will sort of work through that offline as far as whether we're going to include that in that process. And then the active transportation projects will not be included in that. that process. So yeah, there's ample time between now and then for comments. So if you want to have a virtual meeting or come to our office, we have time to review any questions about that.
And just one final thing from my side, we obviously are not allocating actual cash. We're not actually allocating funding to the projects. But as you know, we need to get projects into the CLRP and into the LRTP so that when you apply for other funding streams that are outside of the actual LRTP, you will have to answer the question, is this project in the LRTP? Is this project in the CLRP, et cetera? So that's the importance of it. It's not, we're not actually allocating real dollars. We are saying this is the universe of things we are going to apply for in the various funding streams as time goes on. And our approach, as Adam has already told you, is to try and get as many projects into the system as possible so that when you all apply to your various funding streams, you can say, yes, it's in the and everything that we can't actually get on into the CLRP because of the funding envelope, we're going to still list those in the needs list as well. So every project we're trying to get a mention, every project that we can get in the CLRP, we want to try and get in the CLRP, and the balance mentioned in the needs list is crucial needs that we do need to fulfill in the region. So we're trying to get everything in. And I think that bearing in mind that the funding envelope is a little bigger this time, based on the inputs that we've received from all the jurisdictions and all of the entities and et cetera, it's quite an impressive list that we're able to get in. There's not that many that are being left out, and yes, we'll, work around those active transportation projects to see if we can marry them and that kind of thing. I think that's a good idea. Sure, to round that out. But I think it's this time around, I don't think there's going to be as much tension around it because we've managed to get so many in. There's a good allocation of projects. That's all that we've already got into the list.
Yeah, one comment about the ICG. I know that has kind of different quorum requirements than the TAC, which I think are more stringent, and I'm not sure if you can be remote or not, but I know it does have more members are needed than the TAC, so that's something to look into.
We've already started discussions on that. Adam has been looking at what the quorum needs to be, and he needs to be doing so on. But yes, we do need to we'll probably need to offline just discuss with the chairman or chairs just how we roll that out in practice. But we've started looking at that already.
And could you speak to the form requirements for the ICG for next month?
Can they hear you?
Let's see how you want. We'll check with them offline.
Yeah, but let's follow up with that offline just to get those pieces in place.
And do we know what time that meeting will be? 9 o'clock.
September, you have Labor Day, so you're a week later than usual. Second Monday. I think we got listed on the agenda. Any final questions?
That was good. Great job.
Thanks, everybody.
So the next item is number 8, correspondence. Is there any correspondence this month?
This is the approval letter for our FY22 UPWP from FHWA and FTA.
Great. I guess, were there any requests or this was approval?
There was one request for a follow-up related to the Title VI audit that was performed. I think that there's some documentation that we need to make sure either we get to FHWA. Stacy, can you recall that in the approval letter? Or Matthew, can you zoom in there so that we can take a look at that?
I have not seen that document yet, this is the first time, but we do have our formal VDOT Title VI audit confirmation that there's no findings, no recommendations.
Yeah, so we just need to get copies of that out.
We've got the correspondence to say that we've done it all. So it's a question of, administration.
Sounds good. Okay, the next item are staff reports. I guess, were you going to do a little presentation on this, or?
No presentation on this necessarily. We're happy to take questions though, of course, but this is our Q4 report for the UPWP. So this traces through all of the work that Phantom did from last July, so this past June, and details all of the expenditures. So this was submitted to VDOT, I believe last week, maybe the week before. Again, just traces through all of the end products in our work program, traces through the completion percentages, and our expenditures on that. So happy to take questions, but this is largely administrative in nature.
So I actually did have a question just on the very last page. Kind of a summary, kind of. Maybe it's the second to last, yeah. So I guess my question, like, there's a comment underneath there that there are no significant overruns or underruns, but basically the amount of the funding actually used was around like 55.6%. So that 44.4% is like the surplus. Can you speak a little bit like why was there such a large surplus last year?
Yeah, there's kind of two factors there. One is that FAMPO was largely understaffed for the majority of the year, so we've gotten to a slightly larger staffing complement at this point, but we've had a few different vacant positions throughout the year. So as far as the comment on those cost underruns, that's based on kind of what we knew we would see over the course of the fiscal year based on the staffing level. The other thing is that we started out this fiscal year with the quarterly reports not detailing the non-FAMPO staff activities in the completion percentages. So for instance, quite a bit of the SDBG funds that are programmed into this year's work program are for the Lafayette Boulevard study. So those percentages are not reflective of those expenditures, as well as the Lafayette Boulevard. And then there's also the 610 study, which has, I think, about $100,000 program, which has not started yet. So that's going to be part of that percentage that's sort of left over. So it's something where, based on what we knew we'd see at this point in time, that there were no significant overruns or underruns.
Now, I guess, was there a significant carryover of funds for PL or T303 kind of from our last fiscal year to the future?
It's a little bit tricky, but we worked with VDOT and FHWA to essentially cancel out the deprogramming request that we had for the FY20 funds that we're carrying over. So we initially had the FY20 leftover amounts going straight into the FY21 program. What we've worked with VDOT on a few months ago now is we said that we're actually going to kind of cancel that, take those funds out of this year's work program. So that decreased the PL budget, and that's going to be impacted with the FY22 PL numbers. So the PL numbers for FY22, including the $22 and the FY20 carryover, is about $530,000. So that is quite a significant carryover. In total, I want to say it's about $130,000 from the FY20 program, when FAMPO was also understaffed the majority of that year, into the 22 program that we now have access to. And then for 5303, I want to say that on the FY21 grant, in particular, so the column there that says 5303, that's the 20 carryover and the 21 numbers as far as its program there. In total, the 21 grant, I want to say that we spent maybe 30% of that. So that will apply directly to FY22. So there is carryover funds for PL and for 5303.
So it sounds like you're in pretty good shape with PL and the 5303.
For FY22, yes.
Yeah. I guess like one question, like with the transition reauthorization, are indications that that funding is going to go up?
Nothing set in stone at this point. Ian can maybe speak to this a little bit, but we are working into hopefully seeing an increase in the formula funding for NPOs.
So just a couple of comments on that. The first one is because FAMPO took quite a long time to hire a new administrator, there are 2 financial years where a significant amount of staff budget was not spent. But now I'm here, and if we hire an additional planner or an additional staff member, that's going to erode that at a rate. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, as Adam mentioned, a number of studies that are not completely closed out yet, where funding was allocated to those studies. We're still getting invoices as time goes on for those studies, so they're not complete. The Lafayette one, there'll still be more invoices, etc. So you'll see some of that money, while it looks like it's underspent, it's going to be spent as soon as we get those invoices in from the various consultants.
Sounds good. Thank you for answering my questions. Okay, the next item are member reports. I guess we can go to my left.
I have no report, sure.
Nothing from Stafford County.
Oh, appreciate the opportunity. We have 3 o'clock, we're going to talk about 2 projects that involve the Route 3 and Route 1. And they overlap Spotsylvania and the city of Fredericksburg. I assume we're probably going to talk about Route 3 first. That one is a study to cover all of the intersections, all of the sections of the highway between Farleyville Boulevard. And currently, I think we've sent it out to Endora Drive. It's a very long project with a tremendous amount of V-Trans needs. Hopefully, we can get a kickoff done in a period of time. It was very difficult to get these, which we were very rushed to do because of the nature of trying to get these moving along. The other project, of course, is Route 1. It also overlaps the city of Fredericksburg, maybe looking last of lane, which is 4 mile work, and goes up to the section of Route 3 interchange. So those are 2 studies we're looking forward to. They'll be stars-like studies. They are again part of the pipeline studies that we've had allocated, and that we hope we'll be able to supplement the around 5 with smart scale or other programs, or perhaps around 6 with smart scale and other programs. We just very fortunate to have those. The following week, Tuesday the 10th at 9:30 in the morning, we're going to do the same thing for 2 Stafford pipeline projects. First, Route 1 that begins just north of our Woodstock Telegraph project and goes up to Corporate Drive. Again, very stars-like study. And the other one is, of course, the Centerport area study. Don't want to forget to mention Thursday, next Thursday, 12 at 3 p.m. Login study that will hopefully be finalizing that project. We hope to have a presentation actually on that project at the policy committee in September. So that's our goal, is to get everything on the table for next week. And we certainly don't want to forget, I'm sure Ian might mention this, that on 9th, it's Monday, East West, study that we kicked off. More than that, a lot of stuff, a lot of.
So any other member reports, VRE?
Just to note that, our ridership continues to rise and recover from the low of last year due to the COVID pandemic and some of the stay-at-home restrictions. So we're continuing to monitor that. I think I mentioned in one of the comments, we are planning to initiate an update of our system plan. That will be somewhat of a challenge given where ridership is now and trying to forecast where demand may be in the near term, but we are planning to start that later this fall. We're a little short-staffed right now, but we have hired another planner who will start at the end of August, so that'll help to bring us back up to our full staff size.
Just one quick update. We're tentatively scheduled to implement our early service on almost all of our routes starting September 7th. So that's our target date. Might move a little bit 1 week here out, but yep, September 7th, Tuesday. So once we get that finalized, we'll send it to the group and we will be pushing it out on different media outlets and newsletters, things like that. Make sure everybody knows.
It's important people who have to be at work at 8 o'clock can actually take the bus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should be a lot better.
That's great. For Spotsylvania, I'll just say quickly that we're planning to have a bond referendum in the fall, basically in November. Basically, the details of that were approved by our board, basically at the most recent meeting. Right now, it's 101.7 million. That's it.
What's the funding for?
A number of the DA projects, also basically some money for the Route 217 widening and some money for Harrison Road widening. And a couple of small projects, including Endora Drive. That's it for member reports. So the Next tax meeting will be September 13th at 9:30. There'll be an ICG meeting before then. I guess will there be a separate invite for that? I'm sorry, you need to miss you, Susan.
That's fine. I just want everybody to know that the revenue sharing projects have been approved through us. It's gone to Richmond. You should be getting emails notifying you that you have now passed on to the next step. They must be totally completed and everything uploaded by October the 1st. Okay? And they, the tax have been reviewed by the district and they're now down in St. Louis too. So you should be getting emails advising you what your status is on all your projects. Okay? So if you have not gotten an email on any of your revenue sharing projects, please let me know if there's something wrong, if there's a glitch somewhere. But you should be getting those emails basically that you've gone up to the next step. But just remember, October 1st, I need everything uploaded.
That's good. And anything else should be done?
Just to dovetail on what Susan was saying, on the tax and on the revenue sharing, the expectation is higher than it was in prior years as far as the documentation that's in the system. It really needs to look much more like a smart scale application. So a highlighter on, a GIS map is not going to be an adequate sketch. We need to have a lot more detailed information as to what the project is, much more defined, and that's going to be expectation. So if you get questions from us asking for some more supporting information, that's why. So we'll try to help you with any questions you've got on that.
Thank you very much. I apologize, I missed that road. Did anyone else have any other member updates?
I'll give a couple of brief things. We are watching the Delta variant. Of consequence, the Pentagon, which is the #1 trip generator for commuter services south of DC, basically, gone from 90% permissible capacity down to 50%. So that's as of Friday. So we're watching that, and then a number of the large employers, I think Capital One, for example, one of them pushed their return to work from post Labor Day to post October 1. So it's not having massive changes, but we're with that, apologize for our departure. Every week I call with Senator Warner's office, and we get an update on what's happening in DC, reports on variants, et cetera. We are all therefore watching, just as GRE is. The infrastructure bill, $59 million towards transit is not for operating, it's tied generally for capital, but that helps out with rail, bus replacement, all of those factors. And then two other quick things. We are kicked off our zero bus emission study. We're looking at all the different technologies. It's not just electric, it's not just CNG, it's a wide variety of different things. Keeping in mind that the American market is very different from the European market, and the technology for buses is very different from a Tesla car. So let's just say that how you build a Tesla is how you build a bus. And then on August 11th, we're having a ribbon cutting for our Western facility. For those who don't know, we have our location at Woodbridge, which many people have probably been to, but about 25 miles away out on the I-66 corridor, where we opened a $42 million facility for operations. Now support the I-66 service corridor. If you want to drive all the way out to Manassas and hang out for an hour and take the tour, let me know. We'll get you the details and get you the invite. You can come out and walk around and explore.
We can get VDOT to run a train up to DC and back to Manassas so we can come attend your event.
Don't think we can squeeze that into the.
Any other member reports?
I'll just really briefly mention, we are hiring a vacant position that we're looking to fill. We've reworked it a little bit, so this person is really gonna focus on working with example operators to help them come back post-COVID and get our numbers back up to where they were.
So is that a GW Rod Connect position?
Yeah, thank you.
Makes sense. Great. Any other member reports? Good. Okay, next meeting is Monday, September 13th at 9:30, and there'll be an ICG meeting before that. I guess one question, will there be a separate invite for that, or how will that work?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.